Prabhupada ki, Shri Radha Govinda Madhav ki, Shri Krishna Balaram ki, Shri Gauritai ki, Shri Gurudev ki jai. Swagatam, Suswagatam. Welcome to everyone. Est-ce qu'il y a besoin de traduire en français? Tout le monde parle anglais? Everyone speaks English? Yes. Okay. Good. Oh, you don't speak. Only one. Perhaps someone can translate for her? Anyone volunteer to translate? Which language do you speak?
Sri Lankan Tamil.
I cannot. Sorry, I cannot help you.
English is okay.
Sorry?
English is okay.
Okay, then. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Agyantimidandasya Gyananjana Sharakaya Chakshumiritam Yena Tashmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupam Kadamayam Darati Shvapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shri Rupa Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Samjivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Narita Shri Vishakam Vitam Sha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagapate Gopesh Kanta Radhakanta Namostute Tapta Kanchani Gurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanshakalpatarubhyasha Kripasindhiracha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Namo Bhaktivinodaya Sachitananda Namine Gaur Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate. We offer our respectful obeisances unto Sachidananda Bhaktivinoda, who is transcendental energy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is a strict follower of the Goswamis, headed by Srila Rupa Goswami. So, yes, it's a fact that the ancient creed of devotion to Lord Krishna, as inculcated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the 16th century, and famous these days as the Hare Krishna movement, was almost extinct in the 19th century India. And was not only that, but was generally considered the religion of immoral beggars in the 19th century, by those who knew anything of it. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur restored the worship of Lord Krishna to its proper central place in the lives of the cultured Indians, practically single-handedly. And not only that, but he sowed the seeds of its propagation throughout all the nations of the world. In other words, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is the grandfather of the Hare Krishna movement. Don't forget that in 1996, he sent out his book, The Life and Precepts of Lord Chaitanya. It's a tiny book, but very powerful. He sent it out to the McGill University in Canada, Montreal. That year, Srila Prabhupada was born, by the way. Later, in the late 60s, one disciple of Prabhupada found that book in the library of the McGill University. And he stole it and brought it back to Srila Prabhupada. So you can see. Yeah? So this is a great book, The Seventh Goswami. It sheds some light on the extraordinary spiritual career of a religious reformer, of an immense stature. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is one of the greatest exponents of Gaudiya Vaishnavism in the luminaries of the firmament of the spiritual sky. One of the greatest. He's on par with the six Goswamis of Vrindavan. And up to today, Bhaktivinoda Thakur has received very little notice, if any, in the West. But yet he is the grandfather of Srila, of the Hare Krishna movement. He is the author of at least 100 books and songs. So he's a man who gave himself unstitingly to the betterment of mankind. So I want to concentrate, we could speak the whole day, such immense personality. We have only 1 hour, right? 9? So only 45 minutes. So I want to concentrate on the two formidable obstacles that he faced with during his life. One was obviously the British regime. We should not forget that the Britishers ruled for 250 years in India. They have done some good things, but also they have looted India, left, right, and corner. So, this is a book written by Rupa Vilas Prabhu in 1989, and it's well done, I have to admit. So, let's ponder about the prevailing and generally opposing currents of thought exposed by the ruling British at the time. I would say, and not only the British, but also the Indian intellectuals of that time also. They rallied with the British. This is the word. And not only them, but the common people, even in the 19th century India. Practically the British at large, except for a few notable exceptions, like some scholars, some British scholars, we have to be honest, Wilson, Sir William Jones, but practically for a few, everyone, all the British intelligentsia viewed any native endeavor to uncover or extol the glories of their great heritage as undesirable and foolish at best. At worst, they piled abuse and invective on Vedic thought and scriptures in ill-conceived and misinformed attacks. So, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was born in such an ambience, such an atmosphere. Which year he was born?
1938.
Very good. Just to tell you some glimpse of how far they ridiculed the Vedic thoughts. There was some debate at that time, around the time of the birth of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in the India's Supreme Ruling Council, it was chaired by one Sir Lord Bentinck. They were pondering in that council as to the value of teaching Sanskrit and India's classical literatures. They were pondering, should we or should we not teach Sanskrit, teach Vedic literatures, even teach regional languages? Because, as we know, they were already by then, they had established schools by the British for the education of the Indian people. A few members of the council, to be honest, were mildly in favor of it. But the elegantly expressed, fully ethnocentric and Philistine view of Thomas Macaulay. Thomas Macaulay was one of the deep protagonists of Vedic culture. He was quite imposing, very prominent in those days. Macaulay, remember that name? This is what he wrote in one journal called the Education Minute. Macaulay wrote, he couldn't find one Orientalist who could deny that a single shelf of a good European library was worth the whole native literature of India and Arabia. Can you imagine such an offense? Just one shelf of good European library was much better off than the whole gamut of Vedic literature, including Bhagavatam and Bhaktivinoda. Just imagine. He went on to say, to make the outrageous assertion that all the historical information which has been collected from all the books written in the Sanskrit language is less valuable than what may be found in the most paltry abridgments used at preparatory schools in England. So he's saying, in other words, it is less valuable than even abridged versions of school books for children. See? How abusive, how vindicative. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was born in such an atmosphere. So, why? Because they would ridicule, when you read in the Puranas, it's a fact. You read in the Puranas that in bygone ages, the kings were 30 feet high. They would rule 30,000 years in one go. Maharaj Priyavrata ruled 1 billion.1 years. Just his ruling, 1 billion.1. So you can just imagine the British, they would wave off in one go, in one brush, pushing it down to legends, mythology. We find ocean of liquor, ocean of treacle, ocean of ghee. Come on. So at best they would label it as wild mythology. And not only that, when it comes to Krishna or Jagannath, they used to call it the Moloch. Juggernaut, the Moloch. Can you imagine? They very plainly, they would say Lord Krishna is lewd. He's a lewd person, lusty, mischievous. No wonder England is suffering like hell today. So much karma they have incurred over the centuries. Perhaps a couple of decades ago, they had burnt 1 million cows because of the mad cow disease. So they are incurring karma, just like the Jews incurred karma because they crucified Lord Jesus Christ. So all this to say that this is the picture where Bhaktivinoda Thakur took birth. And this is the environment, the atmosphere. The second major block he had to encounter was from within India. They, even from the time of Mahaprabhu, they were already present. They very severely destroyed Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Who are those persons? The Appa. How many of them?
13.
13. Sahajism is just one of them.
Yeah.
Only one. Let's enumerate them. All. Bowl. There were two types of bowl. Kartabaja, Neda, Daravesh, Sani, Sahaja. We know this one, Sahaja, but there's only one. Sakibeki, Smarta, and we say Smarta Brahmin. It's also part of the Apa Sampradaya. Don't forget they tried to kill Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. They tried to murder. We're not dealing with little boys and girls here. They are murderers. Jati Goshai, Ativadi, Chutadari, Gorunganagari. They are deviant groups. They are very bold. And basically, they are called Apa Sampradaya. Remember, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, one of his pranam, Apasiddhanta Dwanta Harine. Bhaktisiddhanta, the illustrious son of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he would stand up and strongly fight against those rascals. Whichever groups is Apasiddhanta against Dwanta Harine, against the teachings of Rupa Goswami, Bhaktisiddhanta would stand up and demolish, trampled, sometimes even beating physically with his danda. He's a Singha Guru. So, like father, like son. We have to remember the context of his birth. The British, the Apa Sampradaya. So basically, they have downtrodden the illustrious bright image of Gaudiya as expounded by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his direct followers. The six Goswamis, then the famous trio Srinivas, Narottam, and Chamanand. And then up to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, it was the end of it. Baladev Vidyabhushan, and then it's a severe fall, an abyss of major corruption. They have mixed, in the mind of common populace, they would mix the two, the pristine teachings of Mahaprabhu, they would mix it with the Apa Sampradaya. So in the mind of a cultured Indian, in those days, after Baladev, let's put it this way, it was an immoral religion. At least for 150 years, Gaudiya Vaishnavism was compared to an immoral, dejected, degraded path of spirituality. In the mind of many. So this is the state of affair in which Bhaktivinoda Thakur was born. We are complaining it's difficult now in France. This is nowhere near. Nowhere near. So, a very interesting life He's born in September 2nd, 1838, in Birnagar, Ulugram, district of Nadia, so very auspicious place, Nadia. He was the seventh son of Raja Krishnanand Datta. Himself, the father, was great devotee of Lord Nityananda. And he was the great-grandson of Madan Mohan. and the third son of his godfather, Ananda Chandra. So he would be known, there was a nickname given to Kedarnath Datta, that was his name, Kedarnath Datta. So he was called the Daitya Kulera Prahlad, just like Prahlad was born in the Daitya family, right? Which is demonic. So in the same way, we have to understand that, especially on the side of his mother, there was no respect for Vaishnavism. No respect. So he's born in a cradle of, there's no proper respect of Vaishnavism, especially on the mother's side. So in the beginning part of his very early childhood, he was opulent, very opulent. But what happened, a very severe reversal happened very early in his childhood. What happened is, when he was 11, his father died. So the wealth was from the father's side. And subsequently, the grant of land that had been conferred upon the grandmother, in other words, his paternal grandmother, changed owners in one go. He moved from wealthiness to abject poverty, very abject poverty. So he had to face with major difficulties. He married when he was 12. His wife was 5. 1850, he was 12. She was the daughter of Madhusudan Mitra Mahashai. Ranagat, you know Ranagat? When you go from Mayapur to Calcutta, this is where Tamal Krishna Maharaj left his body. The car of Tamal Krishna Maharaj hit a tree in Ranagat. You can still see the tree. So the wife was from Ranagat. Now, Kedarnath Datta, later to be known Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his uncle, he had mastered British education. So he came to Ulagram. Ulagram was the birthplace of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, because the grandfather died. So he came and he schooled the young Kedarnath Datta. He schooled him in Calcutta. In those days, actually, the ancestors of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, they owned 5 villages. From those 5 villages came Calcutta. Calcutta originally was a cluster of 5 villages owned by the ancestors of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So basically, the family of Bhaktivinoda Thakur is at the origin of Calcutta. Let's put it this way. It's a very recent city, Calcutta. Very recent. So anyway, the uncle was quite steeped into British education. He schooled the boy. And so basically, we cannot deny that Bhaktivinoda Thakur was quite attracted by British intelligentsia, British education, British literatures. And this uncle, Kasi Prasad, he was quite an erudite scholar. He was the central figure, like he was part of a literary circle at the time. He was the editor of a great journal, Hindu Intelligencer. So many writers came to that uncle to learn English. So very early the uncle noticed this boy has great ability in writing, in lecturing also. So very early Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he assisted his uncle in proofreading manuscripts. So he studied the books of his uncle, and he was an avid reader. He would go to the public library and read and read. He became, Bhaktivinoda Thakur had a very ill, very frail health, very frail. You will see all his life, he was struggling with his health tremendously. So he got sick, he drank some salty water from Calcutta, he got sick. Then one Muslim tantric told him, be careful, Birnagar, it's a village, would totally disappear due to pestilence, due to cholera. Everyone would die. And in that village, he had lots of kids and kin. And also the Muslim tantric predicted to the boy, you will become a great Krishna devotee. Predicted. Muslim tantric. Mm-hmm. So then he's 18, he's entering college in Calcutta. He's writing already at 18, in English, in pure English. He's writing in English, in Bengali, and his essays are published in local journals. He lectures. And even he taught speech making to a Britishman who later became a member of the parliament in London. Just imagine the command of English that he had. He even compiled a two-part English epic called the Puri, which basically dealt with the life of Porus. Porus used to live at the time of Alexander the Great. So you can see his whole mind, his whole composure was extremely attracted by British literature. We cannot deny. And he had great friends, great scholars as friends. Notably one person, Sriman Vijayanath. Later he's going to become a friend of Rabindranath Tagore, very famous Bengali writer. Tagore. Yes. So he'll become a great friend of his. He would call him my big brother. So he was hanging out with great people in the world of literature. So basically, as I said, he was extremely steeped in Western religious literatures. He was taken, we cannot deny, he was taken by Christian theology, and in one sense, you know what he said? I find Christian theology better than Hindu monisms. Monisms, what is monisms? Shankar. Shankar is Kevala Advaitavad. So he would be more liking of Christian theology than Shankarvad. Keval Advaitavad. So he would spend a lot of hours comparing the writings of Channing. You people from UK must be knowing Channing, Theodore Parker, Emerson, Newman. He was quite into comparative religion studies, you know. One time he gave a lecture on the evolution of matter through the material mode of goodness. In 1858, he's 20, he's going back to that village. The Muslim tantric had told him this village will be wiped out. And true enough, he went back to that village. Everyone practically had died. His sister died. So immediately he brought his mother and his grandmother to Calcutta. Then he visited his paternal grandfather. His paternal grandfather, he was a genius person. He was a great ascetic. Like Bhishma, this person could decide the time of his death. Very great ascetic. his paternal grandfather. He was from Oriya, and he was practically, his days were coming to a close. He was Trikalagya, could predict past, present, future. And he told the boy, you visit all the places in Oriya, you make a book on all the holy places in Oriya. And he did that. At 21 he did that. And he predicted, just like the Muslim Tantric had predicted, he predicted you're going to become a major Acharya. He predicted to his grandson. So now, remember, even though he stepped into comparing religion, he had a very strong intellectual pursuit, but at the same time is living hand to mouth. We cannot deny. So he has to, remember, he married very early. His mother is still with him, his grandmother, I believe. He had to make a living. Money has to come from somewhere. He was not interested in business because he had noticed in the realm of business there is dishonesty, competition for sales, and he figured that this has morally weakened the mercantile class. So he was not interested in business. So he decided, his mode of goodness obviously, to become a school teacher. So first of all, this is what he did. He had by then he had already a very good command of English. He established a school for English education. He is the one who is responsible to introduce English in Orissa. Before Bhaktivinoda Thakur, there was no English studies in Orissa. Let's put it this way. He was the first one to establish a school for English education in Orissa. He was a pioneer in that domain. He could see also the oppressive power of the landowners. So he went to Puri. You know, he worked very hard for his studies. It didn't come easy. He went to Puri to take and pass a teacher's examination. And finally he got a teacher's post in Cuttack, in Orissa. And later he became a headmaster in Madinipur. Then his first son, Anna Prasad, Achyutanand also, in 1860, he was 22. As I said, he wrote a book on all the ashrams in Orissa, and he was acclaimed for that book by even Britishers, even scholars, British scholars, they acclaimed him. Yes, it's a great book, my dear sir. And they could recognize this person he has such moral, religious values. He was very, very much acclaimed even by the Britishers. We will see later, he's going to become one of only 2 Indians who became the Supreme Court judge. Just to make a long story short, he's going to go through the ladder, and not only in the realm of education, but at one point he will shift altogether to a different domain, law. He's going to climb the ladder. At the end of the day, he becomes Supreme Court judge. You understand? What is Supreme Court? High Judge? Court? There's only 2 in those days. 2 Indians. The Britishers, you go to his house, still present today, across the Jalangi. They have built a railway just to enable him to go to work. He had his own train. Just imagine. Is Macaron having his own railway track for him going to work to Élysée? This is the type of figure, of stature, the stature of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Even materially speaking. The Britishers were totally in awe. It would take for High Court judge of that caliber, the amount of work that would be needed for one day, he would do it in half a day. To such a precise level. No one would go behind him when it comes to judgment. He was called all over India. Even the Britishers would highly respect his views on law. And he had climbed he went to the topmost the topmost pinnacle of British success in terms of career. What to speak of his spiritual stature. So then his first wife died. You will see this first son he had with that wife very interesting story. I will finish with that. So he remarried with a very great, she's a Mahabhagavati De. Very interesting, huh? De. De is the same family name as? Prabhu. I have to search there. Is it connected? But she had that name. Mahabhagavati De. And can you imagine, she mothered how many children? 12, 13? Including Bimal Prasad, later to be known Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. She's Mahapurush, this lady, Mahapurush. So anyway, to make a long story short, he climbed the ladder, collectorate officer. He was meant to check corruption amongst government workers, even in those days. And the Indian politicians were steeped in corruption. He had to go check on them. He established an organization, Bratri Samaja. He wrote an English book, Our Wants. He constructed a home in Ranagat. Money was coming in gradually, not in one go. He had to work very hard, passing exam after exam. He was a very studious person, extremely determined. Because children would come. He had many children. Money has to come from somewhere. So, anyway, I don't want to linger. Many positions, deputy register, deputy collector, deputy magistrate. And all the while establishing schools here and there, totally acclaimed by Britishers, Mr. Thompson. He even amended the law in Orissa. His input was all encompassing in terms of education, later in terms of law. What to speak of? Spiritual input. Now, he was searching like anything for a copy of Chaitanya Charitamrita. There's no BBT in those days. Searching like for years in a row. Can't find it. He found, after arduous, strenuous efforts, he found a copy of Bhagavatam. No copy of Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's very interesting, we could ponder why did he come so late to Krishna consciousness. He came very late, in his late 20s. See? Vaishnavira, Kriyamudra, Vijnana, Bujai. Even the most intelligent cannot fathom the acts of a pure devotee. You cannot poke your nose. Oh, he came late. He was in Maya before. Be very careful. Very careful. Be very careful. You are putting your spiritual life at stake. He's such an immense stature. So now, there's a turn in his life. Finally, he can get hold of a copy of Chaitanya Charitamrita. And from now on, he has been reading back to back Chaitanya Charitamrita. Many times in a row. And then he's totally absorbed in pure Bhakti Shastra day and night. He's an avid reader. Don't think he just works. He works as a judge, But what is the rest of this day? I will tell you his daily routine. You will see. He reads and writes late at night, just like Srila Prabhupada. They sleep 2 to 4 hours a day, a night. He's totally steeped in Krishna consciousness from that time onwards. From the time he read Chaitanya Charitamrita, he published a song, Sachidananda Premalankar. Then he delivered a speech in 1869 in the form of a treatise on Srimad Bhagavatam. And when he lectures, not only Indians are there, but even Britishers. They understand. Because he has entered the British intelligentsia of the time. He's totally at ease within the Britishers. He has climbed the ladder from ground level. So he's totally like a fish in water amongst the Britishers. He's at ease with the Britishers, he's at ease with the Indians. So now he's focused on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And this is the time. Remember, everyone knows this story. Second son is coming, Radhika Prasad. Now this is the story of a ghost. And you know the story. For those of you who are familiar with Abhaychana, you know the series done by Bhakti Charu Maharaj on the life of Srila Prabhupada about 20 years ago. There's a whole episode on the ghost living in a tree. And people are so foolish, it's mentioned in the Gita, that some worshippers, they worship ghosts in the tree. This is Mahatamagun. They go for it. Because there's ghosts, especially living in trees. And at night they will bring food, stuff. My dear ghost, please take, this is for you. So the ghost is getting stronger. And in exchange they will perhaps control others mentally and stuff like that. So anyway, there was such a ghost living in a banyan tree. And he had even the power to influence the mind of the local judge. So even the Britishers, they would turn to Kedarnath Datta. Please, my dear Thakura, sometimes they will call him Thakura, you please nip it in the bud. Go and you have to expose this Gunda, this rascal. So even the Britishers, they were counting tremendously on him to restore the law and to prevent the abuse of deviant religious personalities. Britishers knew he has such a caliber in moral, in values, in religious matters. He's totally equipped to expose and to prosecute rascals. So this is what he did. So what he did, there was one man, Kedarnath, be careful, different, Kedarnath Datta. And his daughter, the daughter of that man was a very famous girl, scholar, Pandit Ramabai. So the father, you know what he did? Bhaktivinoda Thakur told him, you go, sitting at the tree of the ghost, and you read Srimad Bhagavatam non-stop for 1 week. See? This is a very strong solution. Very powerful solution. Day and night, it took him 1 month actually, not 1 week. The tree crashed to the ground. See? And from that day onwards, the local people, they found solemn faith in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, another story, another rascal was exposed, Bishakishan. You know the story? Even worse. Even worse. The guy pretending he was Mahavishnu. Just imagine. I'm Mahavishnu. And he had acolytes. You are Brahma, you are Shiv. This is Gunavatar. So, and sometimes he had Siddhi, and we cannot deny they have Siddhi. He would sit erect next to a fire. Sometimes he would lean even half of his body in the fire. Then again he would resume his erect sitting posture. So he would kind of rock back and forth into the flames, in and out of the flames like that. So everyone was like impressed. He could produce fire from his head. Even he kind of befooled to such an extent. Even the then king of Puri had been befooled by him. The king of Puri was under his sway. Just imagine. And not only that, they were funding the guy, giving money, giving girls. Well, I'm Mahavishnu, so I'm indulging into rasa dance, don't you understand? I need some staff. He had gone that far. Bishakishan. The whole, practically a good portion of Orissa was under the sway of this Gunda. And he was, with the funds he had collected, even he dared to build a temple, Triguna Avatar. Call it Triguna Avatar. And then he made the declaration, far and loud, I'm going to drive away the British from India. So you know when the Indians, they hear that, oh, let's hear what he has to say, because they are willing. No one wants to do it himself, but still they want to get him out by then. So the British, they thought of him that he's a revolutionary. We have to address the issue. He's speaking against the British Raj. So again, whom did they appoint for the matter? My dear Bhaktivinoda, Thakur, we have to draw up an arrest order. But no one dared, because this guy has so much siddhi. And you're going to see how the life of Bhaktivinoda Thakur is going to be impacted because of that, because of him. His daughter is almost going to die. Even he himself got severely sick, even to the point of on the verge of death. He had siddhi. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur was adamant. Let us die, but we have to expose this rascal. So what happened is Bhaktivinoda Thakur went to confront him physically. He has guts, this is Vaishnava. We're not just mild, totally unassuming little monks. You can see all the acharyas are very, when it comes to denouncing apasiddhanta, denouncing derivation of the philosophy, we have to be extremely heavy. Prabhupada was so heavy, even more than fall down, physical fall down, that's one thing. But deviation, philosophical deviation is much worse. All the acharya was extremely forceful. You have seen the story. Narottam, Shamanand, Vishwanath. Vishwanath was so mild, his Rasika Bhakta, but when it comes to denouncing, very heavy. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, what to speak of Bhaktisiddhanta? So heavy, even beating with the danda. What to speak of Srila Prabhupada? One time Srila Prabhupada in 68 in Boston, there was one young Indian guy, Prabhupada seized him by the collar. Can you imagine? Sazarup Das, he was not Maharaj, 68. They had to separate. He had to separate them. Srila Prabhupada seized the guy by the collar. You rascal. A young Indian guy. The guy was nonplussed. This is Vaishnava philosophy. We cannot put up with that. So then Bhaktivinoda Thakur confronted Bishakishen. And then people warned Bhaktivinoda Thakur, don't interfere, it's the Lord himself. So, he was surrounded by tantric, yogi. And you know what he said? This is what broke the camel's back. This rascal dared to say, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur told him, come to Puri. Let's have a discussion in Puri, in front of Lord Jagannath. Can you dare? This is what the rascal said. It's just a hunk of wood. Can you imagine? Such an apparatus is a hunk of wood. I'm the supreme person. So then Bhaktivinoda Thakur lost it. He became instantly furious, arrested the Lord, put him in jail right away. And he had how many people guarding him? 3,000 Muslim constables, 36 people guarding the jail, 72 policemen, almost 100% guarding the jail, day and night. And now, this is very interesting. A Britisher, so at least sometimes some of them are intelligent. They say, he told back, you cut his hair. He had long hair. You cut his hair. Why? They keep the mystic in the hair. And true enough, he became like a little mouse. They cut his hair. He was standing nowhere, and later he committed suicide within the jail. Finished. Story is over. See? Okay. So I'll stop here, but just once it's already 9 o'clock, what to do? I'll finish with that lila. The first son that he had with that first wife who later died, Ananda Prasad, that was his name. What happened? That man, he was much older than the other, than his stepbrothers and stepsisters. In due course of time, that man came to law, just like his father he shifted to law. He was into law and became very highly appointed to the level of High Court Judge District. Supreme High Court Judge. That son also shifted to law. But what happened very early in his life, he became raving mad. Raving mad. Raving mad. Raving mad, ça veut dire fou allié. Fou allié, en français. Raving mad. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur was quite, he was quite worried. My son is totally gone. And it went on for decades. And it was at one point of his time, of his life, he was on the verge of death. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur was still alive. So what happened? The whole family, by then, Bhaktivinoda Thakur had many children. They attended to his needs on his deathbed. They gathered around him, the mother, the father, all the children, including. By then he's big. Practically is now Baptist Siddhant. And he was there. And they were chanting, can you imagine? You are dying, you have Bhaktivinoda Thakur chanting for you. Bhakti Siddhant, just imagine the fortune of that man. He may be mad, but what kind of kripa he has. You know what happened? Just before he died, he stood up on his seat and he looked at Bhakti Siddhant Saraswati Thakur, who was his younger brother. He told him, actually, I'm an offender to you. In the previous life, I was a Sri Ramanuji Brahmin, and I severely offended you. I offended you. Yeah, I'm very bad in English. So, Bhaktisiddhanta told him, I forgive you, you are my big brother, I look up to you. And then he left the body. So you can see he had become mad because of the consequence of his sin. He had sowed when he was in his previous life. He must have committed a severe aparat towards Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati in those days, in the previous life, and he redeemed himself by atoning for it, by apologizing to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and then he left. Hare Krishna, we'll stop here, it's 9:05. Hare Krishna, do you have any questions? I cannot do justice, there's so much to say. Anything you want to share? I think today we have to fast until 12, and there will be Pushpanjali at 12 or so. Yes, Mataji?
Why are beings, or why are people sent into the world who are fake? Like you're talking about people who have cities but are actually masters. Why?
Well,
and why are they given cities if they're not?
Yeah, that's a very good. Everyone understood why such great tantric or yogis, they have siddhi in the first place. Aren't they blessed by the Lord? They shouldn't misuse their siddhis. Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Atayava Shanta Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Sakaliya Shanta. This is the problem. Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami. There's so many types of human beings. Bhukti, the sense enjoyer. What else? Mukti, mumukshubi, they want liberation. Siddhi, they want siddhis. Asta siddhi. Lagima, anima, prapti siddhi. You have seen Sai Baba. Sai Baba had prapti siddhi. It's a fact. He can. Prapti means to reach out. Let's say you can reach out into a jewelry store and bring a watch and deliver the watch. This is prapti siddhi. But they are ashant. Ashant means they are not peaceful. They have a hidden agenda. They have an axe to grind. Bhukti, mukti, siddhi, kami. Only the devotee, Krishna Bhakta Nishkam Atayava Shant. Only the devotee is pure in his motivation. All the others, even in the name of yoga, they have a hidden agenda. They want to mostly gather mystic power. You follow? And they become carried away by those mystic powers. All these great acharyas of ours in our line, they have mystic power. But did they exhibit those mystic powers? Very rarely. Very rarely. Srila Prabhupada did a few times. You know one instance of Srila Prabhupada exhibiting mystic power?
In the train?
Sorry?
In the train with the coconut.
Yeah, the coconut in Mayapur. So, I mean, that's mystical. So he's drinking, you know those dab in Mayapur? You have seen, huh? He's drinking and he tells, please pass it down. So everyone is like, wow, prasad of Prabhupada. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, still drinking. So devotees start pondering, I mean, come on, we are 10 drinking from the same dab, the same coconut, it's not empty as yet. This is one time he existed. But very rarely. One time also, Yamuna told a story at the estate of John Lennon in UK. She's walking very early in the at dawn in the park, and it's October, it's cold, and there's mist. And long grass are there in the field. They are walking in the field itself. And of course, she's walking behind Srila Prabhupada. And then she noticed that the grass in front of her, on which Srila Prabhupada is supposed to walk, there is no trace of footprints. Then she walks, she looks behind her, and she can see her own footprints in the grass, in the tall grass. And then she stands on the side and she can see Prabhupada is not touching the ground. He's hovering over. And then she tells her, Prabhupada, but you don't have any footprints. Prabhupada said, So very rarely Prabhupada exhibited, but they are not so, that's not their concern. Their concern is propagate Krishna consciousness. But they are endowed with siddhi. The others, like this guy, Vishikishan, they become carried away. These are just byproducts. They become carried away by the byproducts. Krishna says in the Gita, Yoginam api sarvesham madgetalam taratmana shradhavam bhajatayomam same yutatamo mataha. The great yogi, the greatest yogi, is he who always abides in me. He always dwells in me. This is the greatest yogi. All the others are on the way. But if you stop on the way, if you get off the train before the final destination, you're only labeled that kind of practitioner.
Jesus Christ, I suppose, like when you're looking at the East and you're comparing it, like Jesus Christ with his healings in your philosophy kind of being cities, but he was true.
Yeah. So this is a very good example, thank you. He exhibited some city, but he didn't become carried away by those cities. He stuck to pure devotional service. So it's a very good example, thank you for that. Anything else? Hare Krishna, Srila Bhaktivinoda. Yes, Mataji?
I want to say that Krishna sends these cheaters like Vishikishan because people want to be cheated.
Exactly. Exactly. The cheaters and the cheaters. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Ah oui, mais qu'est-ce que tu veux faire en une heure? Qu'est-ce que tu veux faire en une heure?